for coming out on such a lovely evening, and especially after a nice long bank holiday weekend. Hopefully you'll enjoy tonight's talk. Please feel free to make yourself at home. Hopefully everybody's got themselves a drink and perhaps something to eat. Just for those of you that are new to our Café Scientifique, we'll start with a short talk that's about half an hour to 45 minutes, and then after the talk we'll have a bit of a break just so that you can recharge your glasses and think of some interesting points of discussion that you'd like to bring up. Our one main rule is that there's no such thing as a silly question. Okay, so if you've got an idea in your head and you want to ask a question, then feel free to ask. That's what it's all about. It's not about having to know the subject. It's not about having to think of something really profound to ask. It's about what ideas come into your head and being part of the whole discussion. Please feel free to use any of the social media links that we've been putting up for the talk. Some great news, we're up to 208 likes on Facebook. If you know of people that haven't liked us and that would be interested, please feel free to tell them to have a look. Hopefully they'll find we've got some interesting talks coming up over the next couple of months. And finally, before we start, thank you to our hosts here at Boscanova for providing us with beautiful beverages and fabulous food. And yeah, so the only thing that remains is to introduce tonight's speaker. This is Sulaf, and she's our guest speaker for this evening, who's going to be talking about legal highs. Sulaf's got a background in pharmacy. She did her PhD, and then from there she moved on to the identification and the analysis of substances that are being sold over the internet as so-called legal highs. And I think before I say anything else, and I will hand you over to Sulaf. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Hello. So today I'll talk to you about the story of the legal high products. So to go through them, there is a very famous, the other nomenclature for legal high, novel psychoactive substances, or new psychoactive substances. So I'll start through the emergence of novel psychoactive substances, then a little bit of the chemistry or intended chemistry behind them. We'll go to the legislation, UK legislation surrounding legal high products, then the intended pharmacology, then the purity of the products purchased over the internet, and from there the reported toxicity. So how did the novel psychoactive substances emerge or legal highs over the drug scenario? In the 1970s, 1980s, abuse was limited to certain substances such as toluene, nitrites, heroin, or magic mushrooms. Early 1990s to 2000, ketamine appeared on the scene, gamma hydroxybutyrate in cat. Then in 2000, we started to see the cathinones, particularly the famous mephedrone, or it's known as meow meow, some piperazine derivatives, although some were before this time, salvia, nitrous oxide and kratom, and then a long list, many more in the last few years, such as benzofury, aminoindanes, phencyclidines, and synthetic cannabinoids. So what are novel psychoactive substances? They are famous drug analogs. So if I have a drug, a slight modification of the drug to get a substance, a new substance. For example, amphetamine is a famous one. It's controlled by the regulation. A slight modification in amphetamine, it becomes a completely new drug, which is legal and gives slightly similar effect or similar effect. They can be powders, they can be solids and liquids, and they're advertised normally as highly pure, but the purity is a question which we will see tonight. The problem with them, I found the best description is cat and mouse game, because once one gets banned, another comes on the market, and so on. And the United Nations Office for Drug and Crime, until mid-2012, they had statistics for 251 new molecules on the market. Most of the time they're advertised not for human consumption, plant food, research chemicals, bath salts. So one time I got a bath salt and felt too happy, no wonder. Maybe it's the new. So that shows us the chemistry. This is, for example, phenethylamine or ecstasy that is famous. What I would do is get the same backbone, add a small group here, a small group here, methadone came. So it's only a slight difference in the structure. It's still stimulant, but a lot more is seen with the toxicity. But this is legal, giving the same effect. The same thing with ketamine, which is a tranquilizer used. Remove the chloride here, I still have the same groups, and add the small group here, and as well add a small group here. Then I get methoxetamine, which is a legal high. So then that time I started to look at what new molecules we have of legal highs, and the first search intended these molecules. I didn't know what they are, and then more came, and more, and more, and more, until in the end I found Tweety. So it's a lot of molecules until we get 251 molecules, the statistics show. But they come at a rate at once per week. They're not controlled by the Misuse of Drug Act in the UK, which controls drugs, nor the Medicine Act. Lately, in 2011, there was a new rule introduced for legal highs, which is the temporary class drugs. So as soon as the drug is classified as a novel psychoactive substance, it's not controlled. It goes to a temporary class drug, provided it's not under the Misuse of Drug Act, which classifies things to classes A, B, and C. A is most dangerous, B is less, C is less dangerous. Then the second condition for it to come under temporary class drugs is that the drug is being misused or it's likely to be misused. The third thing is that this misuse is either having harm or it's capable of harming people. In this case, a famous class we had, the cathinones in 2010, they were controlled. In 2011 and 2012, phenazepam, which is alternative to some classical benzodiazepines, and methoxetamine, which is like ketamine derivative, and lately in 2013, Ambumi and benzofury. So when analyzing these products, before we judge their effects, how good they are or bad, what's the abuse potential, it's important to take things into consideration. As a toxicologist, I would look at the pharmacological active substance. What substance is having this effect? Is it stimulant, sedative? What effect I'm having? The second thing, is there any impurities? Is there something like added to accidental or deliberate, organic, or even elemental? Is there a toxic element in it? How is the synthesis made? And as well, not only the desired effects getting from the abuse, I'll be interested in the side effects. What adverse effect is causing? Is it causing liver toxicity, bladder toxicity, heart toxicity? To start with the pharmacology, the intended pharmacology behind these products. First is psychoactive effect. We can classify it to 4 types. It's either a stimulant, so similar to amphetamine, will make a person feel high, happy, hyper-excitability. Some are depressants, so will feel down and very calm. Some are hallucinogen, will go on trips, or antipsychotic to normalize the mood. So instability on mood will be normalized. I'll highlight some of the famous classes. There's many more, any modification can come, but these were the major appearing on the market. The first one are the cathinones, to which methadone belongs to, or meow meow. Cathinones are stimulant, they're very similar to amphetamine derivatives, so consequently you would feel happy, high feeling of euphoria, ability to socialize, extra energy. Aminoindanes are another group that came. They give mild stimulation and as well euphoria. Phencyclidines are like the ketamine. It's really critical. These are a lot dose dependent. So in low doses they're analgesic, but in high doses more effects start to come until there is loss of consciousness and out-of-body experience. And ethylphenidate is a famous analog to a medicine, methylphenidate, which is on the market for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They're stimulants as well, but as well dose dependent as well. It might come to euphoria, happy thinking, and appreciation for music, fuzzy experience. So to go through the first class, cathinones, that's the backbone of cathinones. They're very similar to amphetamine. Apart from amphetamine doesn't have the double bond O and this additional group. This double bond O, it contributed to increased, studies have shown that it contributed to increased stimulation, but at the same time bladder toxicity increased. Normally the ones on the market are mostly synthetic. Cathinones are naturally occurring in cat plant, which is chewed by some population. Why they came as synthetic? Because in cat, cathinones are not stable. This double bond O group will change to OH and the hydroxyl group. And this group, when it changes to cathine, it's unstable. So cat has to be freshly harvested and chewed or made infusion as a tea to be effective. Whereas these are more effective. Initially, methylone came in 2005, then mephedrone in 2007, and the famous one, ivory wave, in 2007 as well. Ivory wave is known as well as MDPV or sometimes bath salt, it's advertised. And the critical issue with them, a lot of violence happened, violent crime happened, and there was the famous case in America where one guy ate his friend's face because of ivory wave. The stimulant effects, they're a little bit similar to amphetamine, but stronger. Normally they have euphoria, feeling of energy, and desire to socialize. The routes of intake, different routes have been reported with this. So first, ingestion. Another thing is bombing. Bombing is when you wrap the drug by paper and swallow it. That's one route. Some snorting effects and some injection. But later we will see the impurities in the drug really affect, and it depends on the route, the formulation. The second one, aminoindanes. Aminoindanes are amphetamine analogs as well. This is the major structure, but there is many more than this. They have mild stimulation. They're less stimulants than cathinones. Initially, they emerged in the early 1900s. They were being promoted as bronchodilators and analgesic properties, but studies were not enough on them to make it to the market as medicines. So later, and many more, not only aminoindanes, many more of the drugs, they were dug up from the scientific literature, whatever failed clinical trials, to make it as a medicine. And because of their abuse potential, they were withdrawn. That's it, mild stimulant effect, and they're reported to be taken ingestion and snorted. Whereas cathinone are controlled now, aminoindanes are not controlled yet. They're still legal. This is an example of sparkle, or one type of aminoindane, MTAI is called. And as we can see, it's advertised not for human consumption and above 18 to escape the regulations. The third class are phencyclidines. Phencyclidines or ketamine analog. The previous two classes, we saw their stimulants. This is hallucinogen, so it's a little bit different. And phencyclidine's derivatives, phencyclidine itself is controlled by the Misuse of Drug Act. But the derivatives of it, when we add molecules, it's not controlled. It's analgesic at low doses, but at high doses, it's amnestic. And normally, depending on the dose, the effects go up. So initially, it's euphoria, hallucination. In higher doses, it gets to sensory deprivation, then complete loss of senses and out-of-body experience. In ketamine, this experience is present as the K-hole. Methoxetamine, the famous ketamine analog, the M-hole is called. Methoxetamine, it was initially advertised, or MXE is called. It was initially advertised as a bladder-friendly ketamine. There is no studies enough But a lot of the abusers reported online and the users that they had bladder toxicity from methoxytamine. But still, with any of these classes, there's not enough studies. The modalities of intake here, they're various, so can be snorting, insufflation, oral, IV as well, intravenous or rectal. Intramuscular has been reported as well. The other thing is ethylphenidate. It came lately. It's a famous analog of Ritalin. Ritalin, instead of having this extra group, it's not there, it's methylphenidate. And Ritalin is used for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But ethylphenidate showed really potential for abuse. It's a stimulant. It causes increased conversation, abstract thinking, euphoria, and as well warm feeling and appreciation for music. So in parties it's taken a lot. The modalities of intake, there is nasal insufflation and oral has been reported, whether ingestion or bomb as well. One important class is synthetic cannabinoids, which have been controlled lately. Synthetic cannabinoids are interested. They've been previously explored to be used as a medicine, their medicinal purpose. However, they showed really high abuse, and this is why they've been withdrawn from the market. They're a group of substances. This is one example of one synthetic cannabinoid, JWH. But each of them they all have different chemical structures, but what's common, they work on the cannabis receptor. So they're good for pain, but however, they have a lot of side effects. They were very much advertised as spice gold, spiced silver, some JWH, there is black mamba. So a lot has been going on the market with the synthetic cannabinoids. So that's pretty much the intended pharmacology. From there we move to the impurities. The issue is more complicated than the pharmacology. The issue with legal high products on the internet, they say there is something and there's a whole lot of impurities, something else, or a mixture. In this case, we've done a study about 76 products, measured them. And what we found, it might have the drug itself. So if it says there is mephedrone, there is mephedrone. However, we found organic and inorganic impurities which were either on purpose. So for example, piperazine derivatives are emetic, so a person will vomit. There will be anti-emetic in them to counteract the effect. Or inorganic impurities, or in some cases with stimulants, we found a depressant just to counteract the effect. Or inorganic impurities such as metals from poor quality synthesis. So normally, most of them made in India and China in labs where the machines are not regulated. So you'll find a lot of metals, toxic metals in them. As well, some of the poor quality synthesis, you get an organic compound, but because it wasn't purified properly. Other things such as anesthetics have been found, lidocaine and caffeine, just to give a certain effect. Or stimulants. Caffeine was the major constituent in legal highs so far, with previous studies as well. Some are bulking agent just to increase the volume of the powder, so there will be no drug at all. And some are analgesic, just like paracetamol was found as well in legal high products. So in this case, we've bought 76 novel psychoactive active products. We've measured them by 3 techniques, 2 that give the chemical signature of the product, and 1 that give the physical properties as well, which I brought with me for demonstration. What we found that there is these, none of the products had at a decent dose, legal high product. So some showed to have benzocaine, which is an anesthetic, caffeine, which is a stimulant, ketamine was seen as a traditional drug controlled, lactose and cellulose, just additives, no effect, and 2 products showed to have paracetamol. It's an expensive Panadol tablet. So that's the first technique. It's a mobile technique. So it's wrapped in a suitcase, and this one, you put few milligrams of the powder, scan it, it gives a signature. So that is a signature specific to caffeine, and this is how I could tell this product definitely contained caffeine at a high concentration. The only drawback of this, being in a suitcase, I couldn't carry it in the airport. They would stop me. The other major drawback, if it's in a low dose, I cannot detect the drug. So I need to have more than 5 to 10% drug. But it's totally non-destructive, so you can measure the drug and reuse it. In this case, what we found, we classified the products to 6 sets according to the major constituents. We found that 23 products of the 76 contained benzocaine, 11 contained caffeine, 35 contained ketamine, 4 had lactose, 1 had cellulose, which is a filler, and 2 had paracetamol. Then I went to another one, instrument. This can give me the signature, it's good, it can detect the caffeine, but still I couldn't use it because it looks like a gun in the airport. So I found this instrument, which is small, and I can hide it in my pocket. So and I brought it here. This one is called near-infrared, and the nice thing about the near-infrared region is that near-infrared can look not only at chemical composition, it can look at physical properties. So if there is any difference in the formulation, colors, I can see the colors, but I got colorblindness lately from the computer. So it can detect everything in the physical properties, and it's a signature. Plus it's really easy, small, easy to use, and less than a minute it can scan. So what happened, I've built up a reference library and then scanned the products. And this way I can see it. The blue one is my reference benzocaine. And the red is a product that is that has contained as majority benzocaine. There is a slight difference, so I can know there is a difference in the purity or the particle size, the physical properties, but still I can pick up things fast and non-destructively. In this case, I scanned all the products and did cluster analysis on them. And what I saw, interestingly, different clusters, which indicate there is even between products of the same constituents, physical differences. For example, here, I can see the red ones are set 2, which contains caffeine. Caffeine are to 2 clusters, separate. As well, number 1 is benzocaine. Benzocaine are clustered here in blue color. I can see as well the ketamine products are clustered, so I have physical differences, physical constituents in them. Cellulose and lactose, the fillers together, and paracetamol here. So in this case, this can serve for me as a really base rule if I get the raw material and test products to them and see where they cluster. And it can be done quickly within minutes. In this case, one sample, the sample that was caffeine clustered, there are 2 different ones. I've plotted their signatures, and I can see a clear difference here. I had really a good backup. My 3-year-old niece, I asked her, are these different? And she said yes. That was my reference analysis.
Highly scientific.
And I could see here differences which picks up to the physical differences among the powder. Then I plotted the raw material. Sorry, they're small, but they're in different colors other than the brown circles. And I can see some of the brown circles are clustered with caffeine, others with cellulose. So I can here have idea, it might have cellulose in it, but in lower dosage form. This is to test another thing, the paracetamol ones, as well they were clustered with paracetamol. So the method looks well and fast. So in this case, I found that there is a complication. There's not only a chemical that is playing a role in the danger of these legal highs, there's physical differences, and these are impacting the health of the consumer, which depends as well to the mode of intake, whether it's swallowed or intravenous or intramuscular or snorted. In this case, we went to the reported toxicity. Unfortunately, there's not, the United Nations report highlights there's still lack of toxicology on these drugs. There's no animal testing yet. And the other thing, there's not enough studies. So all this toxicity got is what we have obtained from the literature or the users' forums. In worst case scenario, death was seen, lethal effects. However, some effects were seen, physical effects, so what adverse reaction of the proper molecule, what side effects it's having, what interaction between few molecules, so when taking a sedative with alcohol, mixed with alcohol, death is resulting. Mental effects, so anxiety and psychosis, dependence, intolerance, and poisoning, acute or overdose. Some were suicidal. So cathinones, a lot of mechanical suicide was observed in them. So the toxicity reported with the famous classes, some are psychological, some are physical. Stimulants like cathinones or aminoendanes, psychological, there was a lot of paranoia, anxiety, hallucinations, and panic attack. Physically, as a stimulant, they were having problem with cardiovascular, so fast heart beats and high blood pressure. As well, one thing was observed with the long-term use of cathinones, because they've been since 2010 now on the market. So myocardial fibrosis have been observed as well. Aminoendanes as stimulants, the same things as cathinones were happening, but additionally, neurotoxicity have been reported with aminoendanes. Phencyclidines, they're very similar to ketamine, and the toxicity was slightly the similar toxicity reported with ketamine. So psychologically, there's a lot of anxiety, paranoia, since out-of-body experience happens. A lot has been associated with memory loss and flashbacks to the past. Some are coma, and in high doses lethal was death observed. Physically, excessive salivation, nausea, vomiting, and as well bladder toxicity was very famous, reported with phencyclidines, and liver damage. Ethylphenidate was causing a lot of anxiety and restlessness psychologically, with physically like jaw tension and stomach discomfort. So since we found the impurities, we tried to look at the toxicity of the impurities from the literature. Caffeine is really lethal. 3 to 6 cups are enough to kill. Not coffee, otherwise I would have been dead.
Shh, don't say that
3
here.
to 6 of pure caffeine. Its side effects are cardiovascular, so we have high blood pressure, fast heartbeats, psychomotor, agitation, tremors, nervousness. As well, there is tolerance, which is really famous. And chronic use will make personality disorders, and high dose is lethal. The danger thing is paracetamol. Although we found 2 paracetamol out of 76, but there's many more. Even 1 is really critical. If this drug was in, paracetamol is the safest drug, but it's the most dangerous if in high dose. So 15 to 25 grams are enough to kill. And the problem with it, the first 24 hours, it's asymptomatic. After 24 hours, hepatic necrosis will start and acute liver failure. The liver cannot work anymore. So that is the dangerous thing of having paracetamol in it. Some of the reported cases from the media. Here it's just from last month, how Britain is in a race with India and China about legal highs. And Meow Meow reached the highest number of deaths, which is methadone, or Meow Meow. Other thing, there is pills which are paramethoxyamphetamine called. And they were being sold at £3 per tablet. There were several cases reported of death, and they were advertised as Dr. Death. I've looked in details to the cases, and we can see it's a diversity of age groups. So we have some school children, some university, some workers or athletes. A lot of the people who took Dr. Death, lethal effect. Methadone, there's many more cases. There will be more than the structures if I highlighted them. But in a lot of, and one time the methoxytamine, it was advertised as bladder friendly, but high doses were lethal. So the other problem was the overdose. 6 times, like the Dr. Death pills, they had 6 times more than the normal dose. Other cases, they found couple mixture. Some cases, no toxicology was done, so no one knew what's responsible for the death. So in conclusion, novel psychoactive substances or legal highs have emerged over the last few years as alternative to classical drugs of abuse to escape the regulations purely. In most cases, they are advertised as analogs to famous drugs of abuse and say they are advertised as legal and perceived as safe. However, the purity is still a question, and the presentation show the physical differences beyond the chemical properties differences in the content of the individual products. The harm from novel is underreported. It could be lethal, but there is still need for enough studies. I would like to acknowledge contributors to this presentation, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. So, how do you want to work the demonstration of your...
Yeah, I've brought an instrument with me. I thought it's easier, so...
Will it be easier if we link it up to the projector and see if we can see the traces that come up once you scan
Should we do that at the
things?
start of the next bit?
Well, I thought during the break. Yeah, it's break time. If anybody's wanting drinks, come in and get them now.